Hi, everybody. I don't think I've ever done this in 21 years of doing a post-game show of just getting up in the following morning. I walked my dog and I wanted to put up what should have been the post-game show last night, but I wasn't going to stay up that late. And to tell you the truth, I was very frustrated with the whole situation surrounding this football game. Uh, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that one team or the other deserve to win or deserve to lose because that's just sour grapes and that's not the way I do things. Uh, I think the reason I'm doing this is because I want to make some very clear points and I want to do it without co hosts, panelists, or anything. I just want my voice to be heard among the din of all of this crazy social media talk and the crazier media talk that comes from each game that we play, the excuses that certain sites make, the explanations for failure, which are totally wrong. I am, I was, and I like to think that I still am a successful business person. And I certainly know when things are right and when things aren't right. So I want to start this program off because I don't have any material in front of me, just my recollection of the game and an article by Terry Pluto that pretty well says it all to me. And it's a compilation of the hate that the media and a large part of the fan base has for this organization and the negativity that spirals on social media to contribute to things that aren't true. And, I can sit here and say this about politics and social media. I want to tell you something that you're not going to want to hear. And it's the only thing political I'm going to say. But it is very easy to understand why people feel that Joe Biden is mentally incompetent to lead this country due to age. But we stopped hearing about Mitch McConnell, who's obviously in the throes of dementia. And of course, the government will deny this. And now Donald Trump thinking that decisions made by the senile president of the United States would lead us into World War II. All of these men are damaged. And the reason they're damaged is because as we get older, and I'm 66 now, as we get older, we lose brain cells and we can't replenish them. And our memories aren't as good as they used to be. So if Donald Trump now thinks that he ran against Barack Obama, uh, in the last election, it's because he's addled. And it's not just him, it's Dianne Feinstein. I'll go on both sides of the aisle. But what perpetuates this is which side will scream louder on social media. And when our own reporters contribute to this nonsense, it gives legs to things that aren't true. I will read this to you. This is Terry Pluto, not me speaking. I find it hard to watch Deshaun Watson. Maybe that'll change. Maybe Watson will pull himself together and look like a good NFL quarterback. But right now, there are too many plays where he seems rattled and panicked. There are times where he's running around behind the line of scrimmage and is causing far more confusion than broken plays leading to big gains. Then he wants to step to the side and make sure that he mentions that he's not a racist. Quote, I'm not talking about his outrageous contract. I'm not in the camp that says Watson has to be worth it to the Browns. He needs to take them to the Super Bowl soon. But Browns fans have a right to expect competent quarterback play from Watson and, yes, more composure from a quarterback who is a veteran. The first Cleveland play of the game was a pass from Watson to backup tight end Harrison Bryant. You probably can make the case that Bryant should have caught the ball. It went off his fingertips, but it was a short pass thrown high. What should have been a relatively easy play for Bryant became harder because the pass wasn't accurate. And as things usually happen when the Browns play in Pittsburgh, the pass wasn't just intercepted, it was picked off and run into the end zone. Here's a second guess. The Browns had 8 days to prepare for this game. The first play was a pass out of an empty backfield, meaning the Browns didn't even look like they would run the ball. Bryant had played little in training camp because of illness. It just seemed odd. Then, when it failed miserably, I found myself saying, "Can you believe this?" Then he goes on to talk about the Nick Chubb injury, and basically blaming the entire loss on Deshaun Watson. And this is what half of the Browns fan base is doing. And the problem that I'm having here is that history speaks louder than one night. History that repeats itself points us in a different direction if we are open-minded and if we're really fans of the team and not being destructive people. Oh, sure, David. That's what you're here for. Absolutely. I just have a train of thought that I really want to put out because I love the Cleveland Browns. I'm a fan of the Cleveland Browns. I'm not a fan of the game that is so brutal and violent that it takes men's limbs away from them, their minds away from them. And this is well chronicled over the 21 years I've been doing this, the yin and yang I have about football. But as a fan of the team, you know, I come back every year to do these programs, at no charge to the public. And, I just do this because I'm a fan and I want them to win. Let's start with this notion about being rattled, all right, and talk about Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson always took a lot of sacks in Houston, but he made plays down the field. But he had fast wide receivers. He had guys like D-Hop, all right? But what he didn't have a running back as good as Nick Chubb, and now once again he doesn't. I think that Deshaun Watson is in the midst of what every other quarterback who has played for Kevin Stefanski has come under, which is a moribund offensive scheme in which no quarterback that we have seen run it has looked good. Now, you can sit back and say, well, what are you talking about? Baker Mayfield? You talk about Joshua Dobbs? You're talking about Jacoby Brissett? Talking about all of them. I'm going back to Minnesota and Kirk Cousins. Everything that he has touched offensively, the quarterbacks seem unable to get the ball to receivers. They're not open downfield. The quarterback starts questioning and doubting his vision. This is the same thing we went through with Baker Mayfield. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Baker Mayfield was the savior because Baker Mayfield's hot and cold. We know that. But the bottom line is that Kevin Stefanski has ruined every quarterback that he's worked with. And he insists on calling the plays. No matter what the circumstance, he insists on calling the plays. If you want to take a look at that first play call to Harrison Bryant, you can say whatever you want about where the pass was put on him. There was a second pass thrown to him that was just a tiny bit behind him, and he popped it up in the air. That could have gone for another pick six. Harrison Bryant should not be on the football field. He did not play all preseason, and he didn't practice. He didn't do anything as far as I'm concerned, and he's done nothing since he's been in Cleveland. Uh, but again, he's on the field, and that's the first drawn up play. But that's not all there is. When a quarterback goes back to throw, if his primary read is not open, he's got to go off to a second and third. What do you do when they're not open either? Now, if you're wondering what happened to Donovan Peoples-Jones, I have no answer for you. I saw him trotting down the field during a pattern. I didn't see him fighting. I didn't see him playing hard. I just think that he is demotivated. And at this point, I want to prove my point about what I'm saying and then come to a conclusion about what needs to be done. Last year at this time, we were holding our heads and saying, what kind of a player is Grant Delpit and Koromoa? These guys don't know where they're supposed to be on the field. And how come Denzel Ward used to be such a good island cornerback, and why is Newsome supposed to be highly rated? And why are we giving up plays that are these bulk plays? And I looked at you straight on and told you it was Joe Woods, that nobody understood the scheme. A scheme is only as good as how understandable it is. And I think if nobody gets it, nobody's going to be able to execute it. I think it wasn't that Joe Woods was too smart for the room. I think that Joe Woods couldn't explain, verbalize, or the defensive scheme itself made no sense whatsoever. Whatever the case is, fast forward one season, and all of the players that we were doubting have suddenly sprung to life and are making meaningful plays on the field. And not just, making tackles, but getting turnovers and preventing balls from being caught. There is virtually no space between the receivers and our defenders. Now, if one change in coaching staff and philosophy can turn players who were drafted into the players that we saw on the college reels and replays, that I just have to tell you, when I see the same thing year after year with an offense quarterbacked by multiple different quarterbacks having the same exact result, there's only one conclusion that a sane person would come to. Now, if Jim Schwartz came in and if the defense just decided they were just going to take a powder, they weren't going to try very hard, and they weren't going to put any kind of effort out, then I wouldn't be doing this podcast. But the fact that the turnaround as far as the defense, the attitude and the desire to win, and the attitude of the coach and what he imparts to the players, Jim Schwartz is an emotional guy who understands that people who are putting their lives and their limbs on the line to play a game had better be damn well excited about what they're doing. And when they do well, they should be rewarded with positive reinforcement, not negative reinforcement, which has lived in Cleveland for God knows how long. And that's what the fans are right now. They're negative reinforcement. Half of the Browns fan base are negative reinforcement for the team. And I wish they would go away. I really do. Because they're unhappy people. They're unhappy with their lives. They're unhappy with getting up in the morning and having to go to work the next day because they hate their jobs. They're disappointed because didn't know their wives were going to get pregnant. They'd had to be responsible for children, whatever the case may be. These are unhappy people. And they're the ones who post the most. And when you're sitting there going down your Twitter feed and you just see one thing after another, I had to get off there because it poisons your mind. It makes me angry at the fans, and I'm not paying attention to what's really happening in the game, and I'm not thinking clearly about it. And I'm sorry if I'm not reading your comments. I'm not even looking at them right now. Uh, I'm looking right into the face of the audience because I have something to say here. We have a head coach who insists on calling all of the plays, who is the de facto offensive coordinator and has never proven that his system works. It doesn't work in the red zone. It doesn't consistently get drives. The only thing that was consistent was Nick Chubb in the backfield and an offensive line that does its job when there's a run-pass balance, but that can't hold up in a pass rush sense when it's pass, 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 pass. Team isn't built that way. How good could David Bell be? We don't know. Amari Cooper played hurt. We know that he's a solid receiver, but he's not going to be a big, deep threat. Goodwin runs in a straight line, and I honestly, there doesn't seem to be a pattern that they run with him except straight down the field. And I got to tell you that he stopped running after the one that should have been picked in the end zone by the Steelers. He just pulled up on his pattern, and I don't understand what's up with that either. The entire scheme is a miss. It's time to change head coaches. And I know you can't do it after game 2, but if there is an offensive mind out there, you need to fire AVP because he serves no function and purpose on this team whatsoever. None. He's a quarterback's coach, and it isn't important for him to take on a title of being an offensive coordinator when he has nothing to do with the process. We need an offensive coordinator who understands the quarterback's strength, the receiver's strengths, somebody with experience, not some guy who's run college systems, but somebody who's run professional systems. That's what we need. Alex Van Pelt first has to be dismissed. He serves no purpose on the staff. And Kevin Stefanski needs to have the play calling taken away from him. And that's the precursor to firing him at the end of the season. I've seen what one change can do for an entire defensive unit. And let's be clear about this. The Cleveland defense only gave up 12 points. Okay? Or was it 13 points? Gave up one big play and 2 field goals. And those field goals were the result of field position from turnovers by the Browns. And let's talk about those turnovers. We've already talked about the Harrison Bryant thing. And to be honest with you, I've never known him to have good hands. And the pass was not a great pass, but who draws up that play to start out a game anyway? If it were completed, it would have been a 4-yard gain. I don't understand why you don't start out running the ball, jamming the ball down their throat. You could get 4 yards the same way and make a statement. This made no statement whatsoever. But there's so much more as far as the turnovers. And I'll go back to Terry Pluto here. And Watson was sacked 6 times. At least twice he could have easily thrown the ball out of bounds and saved a negative play. Let's stop there. That's all Jacoby Brissett did last year was throw the ball out of bounds. And it does not help our offensive situation. It doesn't help us score points. It doesn't help us move the ball down the field. It just makes a 2nd and 10, a 3rd and 10, and then we don't have the ability with the play calling to get the first down. He was flagged for 2 face mask penalties, which I find very interesting because when he was face masked himself down by the goal line, the officials chose to ignore it. He was trying to stiff arm a tackler and grab the face mask twice. It was obvious and it was destructive to the offense. I think the second time he did it, he was angry and he was frustrated with the whole situation. Here's the next thing that Terry Pluto has to say. And he's one of the people who needs to be laid off. He need him out of the way because he is poison. Watson lost 2 fumbles. He had the 2 face mask penalties and an interception. That's 5 negative plays without counting any of the 6 sacks that he had. Let's talk about the 2 fumbles, shall we? The first one could not have been a fumble. There was no evidence on film that he fumbled that football and that Ogunjobi recovered it. And so help me God, they showed it from every imaginable angle, including the one directly overhead. And there was absolutely no evidence that would support the decision that was made. He got the first down on the play and did what he was supposed to do. And I thought the replay had to be the consensus replay, and that if it's not provable, then you go with what was called on the field. And what was called on the field is that Watson fumbled the ball and recovered it himself. There was no indication that the spot had to be changed and no indication that Ogunjobi had recovered the ball, except literally 15 seconds after the play, he was holding the ball up, which means absolutely nothing. The play had been whistled dead 15 seconds earlier. That's the first non-fumble that Terry Pluto's calling a fumble because he doesn't like Deshaun Watson. He's a born-again Christian, and he's offended by Watson's behavior in the past. I'm just being straight about this. I'm not going to be judgmental about his religious beliefs. He feels strongly about these types of things because he's guilty about things that he did himself in his past. And we've talked about that on the program countless number of times. The other fumble was on a play that Jedrick Wills froze, literally stood still and blocked no one. I don't understand for the life of me what happened on that play. I do not understand. Jedrick Wills did not know who to block. And Hightower, just all Hightower had to do was run directly at the quarterback who was booting the other way, and he was blindsided. All Wills has to do is his job. Any quarterback would have fumbled that ball in that same circumstance. Has nothing to do with Deshaun Watson. It has everything to do with Jedrick Wills not doing his job on the weak side and just taking the play off. You can watch the film, and if you don't believe me, then you just go on Twitter and keep telling your lies. But that is what happened. And it's really a sad kind of thing, because just because you're on the weak side, you have a job to do. And if you just lay a body on that guy, that fumble never happens. Now I'm going to put up this comment because Watson pushed a ref, and that's true. And he's going to pay for it. I don't think he's going to get suspended for it, but he's going to pay out of his pocket for doing that. You can't put your hands on a ref. And we'll talk about the refs in just a minute. But I'm willing to tell you the strengths and the weaknesses of the Cleveland Browns, and I am going to acknowledge things because that happened, as opposed to trying to create some fantasy about how much of a letdown Deshaun Watson has been to the Cleveland Browns. Every quarterback who's played in this scheme and in this system has been a letdown to the fans of the Cleveland Browns. However, I want to say this too, because it hurts me. I love Ohio. The reason I came back to Ohio is this is part of my past. These are my roots. And I haven't been here for a long, long time. And I know that Browns fans have always been very effervescent, shall we say. And I think that there's always been an emotional tie between the fan base and the team. The advent of social media that didn't exist when I lived in Ohio as a younger man has turned this into a cascade of negativity. And that makes things very difficult because it's easy to jump on a bandwagon out of frustration, and younger fans who haven't waited as long as the rest of us have, older guys, they want it now, they want it now, they want it now. And I'm trying to give you an answer as to how you get it now. And that's part of the equation. If you want to have a quarterback who does not get hurt, and I'll point something else out to you. In the first week in Cincinnati and again this week, Deshaun Watson is bending down like he is trying to stretch out his back. And he's taking a beating back there. And the reason he's taking a beating is because the receivers are not open downfield. If Terry Pluto thinks that he's just spinning around in the backfield just to show off, then Terry Pluto is a jackass. The fact of the matter is, if there was somebody to throw to who's open, I mean, we sat there and had this conversation about Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield would go back to pass, and he would force it where somebody wasn't open, and he would turn the ball over. All right. So then we have Jacoby Brissett, and Jacoby Brissett finds nobody open, and he throws it 10 yards out of bounds down the sidelines. The fact of the matter is, in every instance, and the same thing with Joshua Dobbs when he played, in each instance, people aren't open. We're not generating separation. Why is that? I don't believe that our receivers are that bad. I believe that the scheme is obvious. Now, I want to point something out. The play that Deshaun Watson, the second fumble, TJ Watt told the press they knew exactly what play the Browns were going to run. And we've heard this many times through Kevin Stefanski's regime, that it's obvious what they're going to do. And you give them that advantage, and you just lost. If you can't keep a team guessing, you've lost. And Kevin Stefanski is the cancer and the poison on this team. He has no positive reinforcement. He has no emotionalism in him. He doesn't get his players inspired. And now I'm going to ask you, each of you, and not just the people in the chat room, but the people who are going to watch this on archive, going to ask you a simple question. What would it hurt to have a different playbook? This will make another year go by, and it's going to hurt because this year we're good enough to win, and we're good enough to be really competitive and possibly win our division. Now, without Nick Chubb, it's obviously going to be a problem. What does it hurt to go down a path to get a true offensive coordinator and take this away from a feckless man who does not get his players inspired? And here's my point. What appears to be somebody being rattled and frustrated, what if Deshaun Watson is frustrated being shackled playing in this lousy offensive system, the same way Baker Mayfield was, the same way Jacoby Brissett was? Jacoby Brissett said he wanted to go away and become a starting quarterback somewhere. No, he just wanted to be a backup in a system where when he got his chance to play, that there was something that he could do. The scheme reeks. It's not any good. I think the frustration is emanating from Deshaun Watson not being able to do what he wants to do. He's getting 2 play calls in his headset. Neither one of them are worth a goddamn. Nobody's open down the field, and he's forced to try with his legs to try to escape a massive pass rush when everybody on the defense knows they're going to pass. And I don't want a head coach, okay, David? Eric Bieniemy is not a head coach. Let's be clear about this. We need experience, like our defense. We can't just keep taking long shots on people. Our defense is so good right now, we can beat anybody in football. We should have won this game. But we couldn't. And the reason we couldn't was because the offense is not organized. The system doesn't work. No matter how many people run it, it just doesn't work. All right, comment. But Moo, we were winning at the end with the supposed terrible play calling that you're talking about. We were winning 22-19, and an incredibly inept lack of block by Jedrick Wills caused a touchdown, a fumble to turn into a touchdown. That play call was recognized by the entire Pittsburgh defense, who aligned up in such a way, allowing Hightower to be on the right side of the line, angled in with a straight line, and Jedrick Wills did not do his job. The fact that we were winning at the end was only because the defense held up and has done what it has done in the first week and now in the second week, and that's hold a team to 0 or 1 touchdown for the entire game. This had nothing to do with our defense. So the supposed terrible play calling cost us at least 10 points. And now I'm going to bring up something else that cost us points. And I have these points not written down, but sorted out in my head. The other thing that made this game difficult was what we know is always the case. The officiating was questionable. Now, I'm not going to sit here, and that's why I'm not leading. I didn't lead off the show with this particular conversation. But to the last play the Browns ran, which was an obvious pass interference, a rookie draped all over our receiver with his hands all over him, pushing him out of bounds before the ball got there. From that to the immaculate fumble recovery that didn't exist, there are a series of things the face mask called deep in our territory that was not called on them, and instead a hold was called on us. There were enough swing calls in this game to have helped a team that was only able to score 1 touchdown. They made 1 big play. And look, good for them. The quarterback got hit after he threw it. He made a good throw. The guy was wide open in the middle of the field, and he took it to the house. Got nothing bad to say about the play. You're not going to hear me ridiculing Kenny Pickett. You're not going to hear me making fun of the Steelers. That's the only play of measurable size that the Cleveland Browns gave up. You're going to make a mistake. The goddamn defense gave up only 1 touchdown and 2 field goals, and the field goals were contributed by special teams. It had one of our situations, Donovan Peoples-Jones forgot to catch a punt. I don't know what happened on that. Did he lose the ball in the lights? He was up at the 30, 32-yard line to catch a punt, and he just ran away from the ball and let them down it at the 6, 7-yard line. It you know, you can't point to just Deshaun Watson in all of this. When they were winning the field position battle, the Steelers, they just got close enough for Boswell to kick some long field goals. That was the deal. And that is my point, Richard. Do I dislike Baker Mayfield? I don't care for his personality. I don't care for his character. I think he shoots his mouth off too much, and I don't think he's proven himself in the league. Okay? That's my opinion of Baker Mayfield. Is he a bad quarterback? No. I think that he shows signs of being able to do some things. But that's absolutely right what you're saying. There's no separation, no blocking, bad coaching. And that's not why we got Deshaun. We got Deshaun to be Deshaun, not to be Kevin Stefanski. And this is where the fan base is incorrect. I don't, that's like saying, you're having a hard time at work and your boss is the biggest prick on the planet and he's just halfway up your ass. So you're going to buy a new suit and wear it to work, and that's going to change everything. It doesn't work that way. The presence of one player doesn't change the scheme that was failing previously. It will fail for everyone. Now, if you want to take that to mean that, you see, Baker Mayfield really is a good quarterback, he has his chance to prove this over 17 games in Tampa. I'm not a Tampa fan. I'm a Cleveland fan. But when I see him doing better away from Kevin Stefanski's system, I say, well, maybe he's been freed from this shackle. So, again, what you're saying is right until the very end. One man cannot overcome a system. I don't understand why people think that he's supposed to be wearing a cape. I think it's a setup to humiliate Deshaun Watson. And I think some people are doing it for moralistic reasons, like Terry Pluto. Others are doing it for racial reasons. Because I see no other reason. I mean, the reason we have 11 men on each side of the line of scrimmage and we have a roster of 53 people is because it's a team game. One guy just can't be shipped in and change the fortunes of a moribund offensive system. He also has Mike Evans to throw to, David, a big wide receiver who has speed to get downfield. And, again, I'm trying not to get into the social media arguments because people are just trying to stir up dirt. They do the same thing politically. They're just trying to stir up dirt. And they're trying to make people angry. And, I just shut it down. And I don't read anymore what's on Twitter. I just don't, because the people are just either very unhappy with their lives or just trying to grab attention. If you want to grab attention, do a show like this. I don't give a shit about the attention personally. I just want to talk some sense to people. And, a bass player, a bass player, a bass player, you're playing with fish. I think Watson may be the quarterback in a different scheme and system. The thing that I note is that since the run where he spun and broke a couple of tackles, he's not moving as fast. He doesn't look like the escapable Deshaun Watson that he was when he was in Houston. And he is calling a couple of plays for his legs, and he's not moving as quickly as he used to. And time off or just number of times hit, or if there really is something wrong with his back. I was the only one in the media that said that Joe Burrow was hurt and that the reason that they were throwing all of those balls to the sidelines is he could loop them because he couldn't step into his pass because of his calf muscle and possibly his knee. Now it comes to pass that they're questioning whether they're going to play him in week 3 because he's hurt. I'm going to be the first journalist to say, and I do consider myself a journalist because I tell the fucking truth and I don't charge people for my opinions. He's hurt. His back is hurt. You mark my words. He's running like a guy with shit in his pants, and there is nothing wrong with the field. I just believe that he's hurt. I think he's getting bounced around back there. And what else do you do when you go back to pass against a team that wants you in a pass-only situation when your great running back goes down? Now, let's talk about Nick Chubb for a minute. Minkah Fitzpatrick intentionally did that to him. And this is the part of football that hurts me personally. It makes me not want to be a fan of the sport. I'm a fan of the team. I'm not a fan of the sport. And he could have gone in with his shoulder. He went in with his helmet right into the side of his knee and intentionally injured Nick Chubb. Then he lays down on the field like he's the injured party, with Steeler players kneeling around him praying for him. And what do you know? He's back in the game later. And then they thought better of it and took him out of the game. We've been playing this team for decades on my watch, and this is what happens every year. They intentionally injure our best players. And that's what happened. Nick Chubb's career might be over because it's the same knee that was reconstructed at Georgia, and I don't know any history about a total reconstruction of a knee twice. But we're talking about multiple tears here. I think that, and you know, David, there is a slight truth in this. I mean, RG3 would know when the legs are gone, the legs are gone. You take too many hits. Running quarterbacks just don't work in the NFL. Deshaun Watson is a passing quarterback, and he needs to remain a passing quarterback, but he can't just stand back there unless you want him to stand back there when his receivers aren't open and fall to the ground before somebody hits him. He's trying to make something happen, but in this scheme, there's no separation in the secondary for the wide receivers. You know, and again, when you talk about Minkah Fitzpatrick, you talk about Mike Tomlin, who orders people to do these things. He's an assassin. He's a person of low moral quality and caliber. He's a head coach who gets his players to wound and injure players. He's a career ender for some players. And he's the type of person who takes what football is and uses it to justify going about something in the most violent way possible. That's how he manages to stay at 500, folks. He wounds and injures other players. And he's not going to apologize for winning. It's not a matter of that. That's just an obfuscation. He said, if you have an open shot at this guy, take your open shot. And that's exactly what happened. We don't know that a bounty was put on him, Tom. I can't go that far. But Minkah Fitzpatrick did that intentionally. And, you know, it's interesting. The shock was so great of his helmet hitting that knee. He did it, and he took himself out. Yeah, I heard about the chest contusion. But, he'll be back. Chubb won't. Oh, Lord Almighty. You can look at statistics. You can say that, Deshaun Watson is not living up to his previous standards, and that's the obvious approach that unfortunately our media is taking. Uh, Jerome Ford had a nice reverse cutback, near touchdown run, and we got the ball into the end zone and took the lead. The problem is that you can't stop blocking. You can't take a play off. And as I explained to people before the game, in a close game, going down to the wire in Pittsburgh, the league will find a way for Pittsburgh to beat Cleveland because it's part of the running commentary of this league. This is the way it's been for decades, and it's the way it's going to continue to be. The Browns played well enough to win. However, and that big however, the last play of the game, if you call that an interference, we still technically have a chance to win the game. Do I think we would have? No, because I don't think the scheme could have gotten the ball down the additional 50 yards, or whatever, or the amount to kick a field goal. I have no confidence in the scheme that Stefanski's running, and he holds himself, well, verbally he'll say he's to blame, but he holds himself blameless, and the organization has to take action. So we need a real offensive coordinator. We must terminate Alex Van Pelt. He serves no logical purpose in this process. Or if we want to keep him as just a quarterbacks coach, to keep him employed, I'm all good with that. But we need a real offensive coordinator. If we're willing to spend money like we're spending money on our defensive line and our quarterback position, we have to be able to find somebody who is like a Jim Schwartz, but offense wise, somebody who can open things up and give the offensive players the same reason to psych each other up and get excited on the field that Jim Schwartz has given our defense. At 1-1, there are people already saying that the season is over. And this, again, is another part of what I call the Twitter conspiracy to, again, make true fans lose hope. And the fact is, without Nick Chubb, our odds have been altered radically. And as long as we're running Kevin Stefanski's scheme, it's going to be a real problem. The Pittsburgh Steelers in the scoreline beat us. Their offense did not beat us. Their defense knew what we were going to do, and we did not have the requisite scheme to be able to pull off enough big plays, just one, like they did. The game's over and we win. If we separate from them literally by 10 points, they can't come back and get us because they couldn't consistently move the football. It's a loss, and a loss is a loss, but it's not the end of the season. We're playing at home the next 2 weekends, and we have an opportunity for the defense to continue playing tough and to continue trying to work on an offense that is, I think, unfixable because the scheme is bad. But I think we can beat a number of teams just with our defense. It's just sad that we're being turned into the Steelers and the Ravens when we have better offensive options than some of those teams have had historically. And we're playing somebody else's style of football. And I'm glad that Jim Schwartz is bringing this physical football to our defense. But we need to support the defense with a competent offense that is capable of putting up 27 points a game. If you have that, you win. You don't lose very many games. And you're not going to turn the ball over that will be immediate 7 points before they've even run an offensive play. That ain't going to happen again this year. So it took a lot of circumstances for the Browns to lose this game. And yes, the season just started, and this is the first bitter pill we've had to swallow. And I think, what happens with the analytics crowd, you know, here's what I say about that, David. There are people who were last year saying what a waste it was getting Grant Delpit. Now look at him. That Koromoa just didn't get it. And now look at him. Who's the Darius Smith? Now look at him. Take a look at people who are making plays on this team. Our defensive backs who are just ripping the ball out of the hands of receivers before they can catch it, just literally step for step. That Emerson was barely thrown at and targeted in the entire game because he's proving to be that good. We had everything we needed defensively except the coordinator, the communication, and the excitement. We can get that on the offensive side of the ball. It's out there. And DePodesta, as far as analytics are concerned, it's a side issue. They can keep track statistically of what they want to keep track of. But an offensive coordinator who knows the game will overrule analytics. If you're scoring 27, 30 points a game, the analytics might be valuable in figuring out what Kenny Pickett's going to do before he does it, which they did, to have a good defensive game plan in place because of tendencies. I'm all for statistical analysis. Don't get me wrong. But, I'm not going to sit here and say DePodesta this, analytics that. We need an experienced offensive coordinator like we have an experienced, seasoned defensive coordinator who know how to get things done in this league. That's not Kevin Stefanski, and it's not AVP. Let's just make sure of that. And Aaron, I'll tell you this. Lamar Jackson is by far and away the best quarterback in the division. He's smart. He wins. He plays hard to win. He's loved and respected by his whole organization and fan base. All right. This, again, is bullshit. Okay? It's bullshit. Didn't sign a fucking contract with the team. He held him out. The reason they don't have more quality players is because he held the team up in negotiations that never got resolved. He only gives a fuck about himself and being a billionaire. He's not as fast and quick as he used to be. He is not a good deep thrower. He's inaccurate when he throws the deep ball. You want this to be the case, but it's not the case. Yes, he wants to win, but he wants to win for himself so he can move on and have greater career success and more money. He said it on a goddamn podcast. Wake up. Lamar Jackson is by far and away. What have they done? What has he done? Shut up. You see, and this is the kind of thing, you're depressed. You're clinically depressed, my friend. Get help. The season is not over. Maybe for you. If it's over for you, then leave. Don't splatter your negativity all over. Just leave. I mean, it's over for Nick Chubb. Okay? The season is over for Nick Chubb. And that's a tragedy. It really is. But they're going to continue to play the remaining 15 games, Anton. That's the bottom line. The season's not over. We're 1-1. The Bengals are 0-2. The Steelers are 1-1, and the Ravens are 2-0. Season is not over. I know. I know a troll when I see one, but I think it's funny. This guy's great, ain't he? I know. I know he want to be a billionaire. I'm in Baltimore. I don't know what that means even. You should change to becoming a Steeler fan because you're functionally illiterate. And that this is my point, Mr. Rollup. He is going to end up getting fired. We had a saying in business, and uh, when a business was going to go out of business, it could go out of business one way or another with a bang and just do a, we're closing the doors forever sale and be gone, or do what was called a slow bleed. And the worst thing in the world is a slow bleed. And you see it a lot in retail, like Bed Bath and Beyond. I could have told you that Bed Bath and Beyond was going to go out of business 5 years ago because they were stocking their shelves with God knows what, and you couldn't find anything in the store. But, the slow bleed is the danger because it corrupts everything around it. And that means the work staff, the attitude, stock investors, you name it, it's poison. And waiting to fire Stefanski just assures another year of disenchantment on the offensive side of the ball. Look what one change did for our defense. The right change will do the same thing for our offense. You mark my words. And it is going to happen, but unfortunately, it's going to be a slow bleed. It should have happened last year. And Gemini, we can be, we can beat the Steelers. You know that we can do that. It should have happened last night. But if the Queen had balls, she'd be king. Right now, we're 1-1 and tied with the Steelers. We got to move on. Got other games to play. No reason to hang our heads. I thought our defense played great. And I'm not mad at Deshaun Watson. I think he's got the wrong system for him. And he knows it, and he's frustrated. And it's absolutely true, Gemini. It's the same thing in the restaurant business. You're better off closing your doors because you end up losing more money with the slow bleed, fewer and fewer customers. And then you can't afford to pay your employees. You try to end up with fewer cooks, fewer waitresses. Your service suffers. Fewer people show up. It's like dominoes. And as far, Harbaugh himself is Harbaugh. The Ravens will be the Ravens. That's their character. The Steelers will be the Steelers. That's their character. We have to have an offensive character. We've got a defensive character brewing here, which is exciting. We need to have an offensive plan and identity. And we don't have it. And with Nick Chubb gone, we've lost the one identity that we did have. With that, I'm going to leave you. This is not analytical. This is not a numbers game. I'll look at the numbers later. This is from my heart, what my eyes tell me. And as a proud Cleveland Browns fan who's tired of all the bullshit on social media, I just want people to know that there are people who are risking life and limb to play this game, not so that you can whine and bellyache and make up ridiculous things. Appreciate the fact that these players are playing a game that could potentially make them wealthy, but they're doing it with the risk of life and limb. And when officials allow people to use their helmets as spears, which I know is against the rules, when officials enforce rules selectively and call pass interferences and then don't call pass interferences, it just muddies the game up. And with all the gambling money that's on the line, it tarnishes the reputation of the game. So I just, you know, and again, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, we'll see if he's by far Mr. Butler. And maybe the butler didn't do it this time. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and for the fans who support the Cleveland Browns. Thank you for supporting this program. For the people who just want to be, negative, go somewhere else. I don't need you here anyway. I don't look. I'm not an analytics guy. I don't sit there and stare at how many people watched my program after the fact. It's not enough to worry about. Uh, I just want the team to win, and I think we're closer. We're closer than we were, and we just got to make that next move to get our offense to the point where it's as excited to be on the field as our defense. You look at our offensive guys out there and they look downtrodden compared to our defensive players. And it's becoming a night and day scenario. You can see it with your own eyes. We need infusion on the offense. And it isn't just bringing players in, it's an attitude infusion. And it's a scheme infusion that will give us a better chance to succeed. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you again later in the week. Until then, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Have a good day.